Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about some plumbing tools. Next lesson we're going to work on plumbing fittings and types of pipe, and then we're going to do a little plumbing project. So first thing you got to do is learn your tools. This first tool, this is a pipe reamer. This tool is used for black iron pipe as well as galvanized steel pipe. Use this tool to ream out the inside of the pipe after you cut it. As you cut pipe, it leaves a little bit of a lip on the inside and a burr typically, so you're going to use this reamer to clean that out so that you don't restrict the flow. This is your tubing cutter, your pipe cutter. We use this to cut the black iron pipe as well as the galvanized steel pipe. Has these two rollers here that roll around the outside of the pipe, as well as this cutting wheel here that actually does the cutting. When you use this tool, you want to make sure you don't reef down on this too hard and damage the cutting wheel. These are replaceable, but it's not something you want to damage just for the fun of it. This is our pipe die. This is used for cutting threads on our black iron as well as galvanized steel pipe. It's reversible, so it goes one way and ratchets and then the other way. That's so that you can back off the threads and clean the chip out so that you have a nice, good thread. Pipe threads are tapered, so these dies in here, which are also replaceable, are actually cut a tapered thread. That way your threads seal as you tighten it. So the tighter it gets, the better it seals. Here's a different example of a different size. This is a 3/4 inch pipe. The previous one was a 1/2 inch. That's measured on inside diameter of the pipe. If you notice, that is much larger than 3/4 of an inch. This tool is really nice. It is replaceable, so lots of years of use out of these. In industry, they still use these hand tools, but a lot of times they're using a machine to thread this pipe. It's a lot faster, but this is a handy skill to know how to use. Because of the tapered threads, you need to put something on those threads to help with not only lubrication as you're threading them together, to help keep the pipes from galling or sticking together, the fittings, as you tighten them up. Also, it helps make for a better seal as you tighten the threads. You have to put on something. So you have two options. This is Teflon tape. It comes in rolls. It's not actually sticky like tape. It's used on the threads to help make a good seal. Remember, when you're putting Teflon tape on the threads, to always roll it off. You don't need a ton. One wrap around the threads is fine. And wrap it clockwise, so as you tighten your threads, it doesn't pull the Teflon tape off. So Teflon tape is a good use for threaded pipes. Remember, black iron or galvanized, as well as threaded PVC fittings or copper fittings. This next product, this is pipe dope. It's a thread sealer. Okay, this stuff works really good as well. You basically paint it on there and it makes a nice seal. So depending on your application, you may use pipe dope or Teflon tape. Moving on to smaller diameter or a different type of pipe. This is a different style of tubing cutter. This works really well for copper pipe. It's got its own built-in little reamer in here that you pull out to ream out the inside of the copper pipe after you cut it. These work well. Typically, you don't replace the cutters on these. When they wear out, you throw them away and you buy a new one. This is a different style of a tubing cutter. It's the same concept, but instead of having to thread it in to tighten it up, you slip this over the pipe and you just spin it around and it cuts the pipe. It's got a little spring in there. Does a really nice job. They're a little more expensive, but I think they're well worth the money. As far as cutters go, when you're working with PVC pipe, you have a couple of options. Excuse me. These cutters here, they're basically like a big scissors. They work really well for cutting PVC pipe. You just open it up, you give it a couple of ratchets, and it cuts through it. Main word of caution with these: when your PVC pipe is cold, it's typically brittle. If you're using these on cold pipe, a lot of times you have an issue with your pipe wanting to shatter, so be cautious. The nicer brands of these have replaceable cutters, so you don't have to buy a new one of these. You can just replace the cutters when they get wore out. A hacksaw is also a handy tool for cutting pipe. Remember your hacksaw blade, teeth need to face in the forward cutting motion, so that as you cut, you're cutting on the forward stroke, your teeth are pointed that way. Hacksaw blades are sold in teeth per inch, so the more teeth per inch, the finer the blade, the finer the cut. Okay? This next tool, this is a flaring tool. This is used on copper pipe that uses compression style fittings that you need to flare instead of solder. So you put your copper pipe in one of these holes that correlates with the size of the pipe, clamp it down, put your flaring tool on top, flare it out, you're good to go. Speaking of copper pipe, and when we're doing soldering with copper, this is solder. This is used for soldering copper pipe together. Make sure when you buy your solder, you're buying the correct type of solder for your application. If you're using it for pipe that drinking water or other water goes through, it needs to be lead free. We don't want to be putting lead in our water. They do make lots of types of solder, so this is a solid core lead-free solder, great for this application. For soldering copper pipes, they have acid cores and rosin cores and so on and so forth, depending on what you're soldering. So make sure you're buying the right stuff for your job. When you solder copper pipe, you need to use some sort of flux. So this is tinning flux. What we have here, it's a little gray in color. It helps your soldering process. It helps clean the joint. Tinning flux has a little bit of solder in it to help your joint. This is an acid brush. We use the acid brush to wipe on the flux. Steel wool comes in different grades. They represent how coarse it is. It's nice for using for cleaning your copper pipe. It's really important that your copper pipe is clean, otherwise your solder won't stick. And I'll give you an example of that in the following video. Your wire brush for your copper pipe, you can tell here, it's got a couple of holes that are different sizes, so for 3/4 or 1/2 inch copper pipe, and then a brush on each end that will go on the inside of the pipe, so you can clean the inside and the outside of the pipe, as well as your fittings. Okay? When you're soldering, you need to find some sort of heat source, whether it be propane or MAP gas. MAP gas burns a lot hotter than propane. It works really good in a lot of applications, but propane works really well. It's cheap. These heads on here are nice because all you have to do is turn them on and flick the switch and press the button, and you got flame. So you're not having to carry around a friction lighter and adjust your torch and all that other stuff. I like MAP gas because it does burn a lot hotter if you're doing some repairs at home, or you're like installing a new hot water heater and you have to put fittings on and there's a little moisture left in the pipe. This does a good job of heating that up quick enough and evaporating that moisture so you can solder your joints. So I really like MAP gas, but there's nothing wrong with good old propane. Getting into some tools. I know most of you recognize these. You're gonna call them channel locks. Well, they're actually a water pump pliers, so that's what the real name is water pump pliers. They're a handy tool, they're adjustable, they work really good for fittings where you're having to thread them in there because it's adjustable for size. It holds well. Be cautious when you're using them on like PVC fittings. because it can make some pretty nice gouges in there if the fitting slips. Your pipe wrench, same kind of deal. It works great for holding fittings, tightening up pipe when you're putting threaded pipe together, or valves on, or unions, or whatnot. So your pipe wrench, they're again adjustable. These are sold in different sizes for your different applications. This is our adjustable wrench. This is not a crescent wrench. That's, there again, the brand name. So your adjustable wrench, you're going to use these on some fittings as well, just because it's a super handy tool. It's adjustable. Always make sure when you're using this tool, you pry down so the pressure is on the strong side on the jaw here, not on the threaded side. So, you know, making sure you're using this in the correct way makes your tool last longer and keeps it from stripping out your fittings. We'll see you on the next one.